Hi, and welcome to A Drummer's Guide to, the podcast answering your questions about what it takes to be a professional musician aside from actually playing your instrument. My name is Emily Dolan Davis. I have been drumming since 1999, professionally since 2008, and helping others to do the same since 2018. And if you have a question that you'd like me to answer on a future episode, you can go to emilydrums.com/AMA, and that is exactly what today's lovely person has done. So this is an anonymous question, which is always fun. I don't know why I find anonymous questions like, ooh, who is this? So thank you, Anonymous, for writing in this question. Makes it sound like it's a letter. Right, I'm gonna read out this question to you and then we will get to it. So, hi, great start. By the way, apologies, my energy is slightly low today. I don't know about you guys. Obviously, this is coming out on Saturday. I'm recording this on Thursday. But this week, energy levels have been not great, and I don't know what's happening. This past Monday allegedly was Blue Monday in, let's say, the Northern Hemisphere. Am I getting that right? Don't know. Yeah, so apparently it was Blue Monday, which is meant to be the most depressing day of the year. I don't know why. But anyway, I was fitting right into that category before I read about it. So anyway, that's why I'm a little bit introspective. No, right. Okay. So I had therapy yesterday, so I'm fine. So hi, I am in a relatively busy covers band and have been part of the band for 4 or 5 months. This is not my first rodeo. I love that phrase so much. It's not my first rodeo, shall we say. The issue is the amount of money the band makes and the type of gigs that they're doing versus the effort required. For example, there is a fairly regular pair of gigs that each pay less than £100 and involve at least a 3-hour round trip to do one. One weekend, both venues were booked, resulting in 6+ hours driving and half the profits going into the petrol tank. There is another gig that is pretty much an hour's drive, is of no perceivable benefit to the wider business of the band, and has recently paid as low as £70. I feel that while cover bands don't get paid very much for pub gigs, this is not sensible to accept. I've raised this with the band because I feel like I know my worth, but I can't really see what the long-term solution is. They're great to play with, but I feel the money side of things and related practical elements are not being looked at fully. I don't like turning up to gigs with a sense of resentment and a chip on my shoulder, but that's what's happening. However, I can't help how I feel about this. I don't think the band is doing quite enough functions to warrant these sorts of gigs, which, after several years of experience, feel like somewhat a waste or misuse of time. Moreover, I think some fees from functions are being retained for band admin, which means that I feel like there's always slightly less coming to me than there should be. How would you handle this? I don't really want to walk away, as they're good folks, but it's a really good folks and it's a really good musical experience, but I don't think this is the best setup. And if I'm really honest, I don't really want to have to do some of these shows just to be part of the band. So, first off, thank you for your question and for being so honest and open, because whenever it comes to this sort of stuff, like bands, money, all that sort of stuff, it's hard. It's a hard conversation, just generally speaking, let alone having to address it with a band, especially if you've been playing with them 4 or 5 months, and clearly this band, you are employed by the band, if that makes sense. This is not your band, from what you're saying. I have a few thoughts on this, funnily enough. I thought I'd open out by saying, dude, I feel like everyone listening that has done this thing for any amount of time, we've all been there in one capacity or another. I wanted to tell you about, this was so funny to me. So there was this one gig that I did. I think I did it twice. Yes, I did. I did it twice in the end. I don't know why I did it a second time, but I had this moment, this realization of what in the world is going on? So basically I got a call for this gig It was a covers gig, and it was down in Cornwall, I want to say, and I was living in London at the time, so long journey, probably like 6 hour journey, right? And basically this is with someone that I didn't know, but we had a mutual friend, and instantly, as soon as I'm like, someone new, my ears prick up and I'm like, I must expand my network. That was very much I still have that, to be fair. Like, oh, new people, I get excited, like just on a human level, actually, more than anything else these days. I love meeting new people. I love playing with new people. It's exciting, and just like, yeah, there's an element of not knowing what's going to happen, and I really enjoy that. So anyway, and they sort of explained the gig to me, and it was a very like low stakes gig in terms of learning stuff. It was a bit of a jam band kind of vibe. And the person said to me, look, the fee is low, but to me, I was like, I can afford to do that for the sake of a fun, random gig with random people. Sounds like fun, sort of sketch. And this band leader basically said, look, to make it easier for you, you haven't even got to bring kit. And I was like, this is just ticking so many boxes. He said, if you could bring breakables, that would be great. I was like, yeah, fine. And he said, oh, and if you don't want to drive, I can come meet you with the rest of the band and we can drive together. And I was like, I'll be honest, most of the time I prefer driving myself because I like my own company. I enjoy that time, that silent time to like decompress after a gig, or just to like be in my own world, especially driving. I love driving so much. But anyway, because it was a gig that was so far away, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take you up on that offer because the fee is so low. I was thinking about petrol, rah, rah, rah. And I was like, you know what? And I seem to remember that that's what they pitched it as. It was kind of like, look, I recognize that this fee is incredibly low and a lot lower than you usually would do it for. So with that in mind, if you want to come with me to save on petrol, or with us, with the band. And I was like, yeah, okay, great. That sounds good. Anyway, did the gig. Bear in mind, we're getting out at like midnight. And as I said, maybe it wasn't a 6 hour drive. I want to say it was like a 4 hour drive. And I knew that because I'd sort of been there before. I can't quite remember the details, such a long time ago. But because, as it turns out, when we were driving, it became very apparent as we were driving to the gig that this person was incredibly frugal with money, which I'm all for. I am a fan. I love a challenge when it comes to like cooking on a budget. Like, I get my most creative when I have nothing in the house, sort of thing. But what became much more apparent is that after the gig, got out at like midnight, whatever. It was probably a bit later. And all I'm thinking in my head is, right, we've got this long journey that then gets me back to my car because I'd come and met them somewhere that was not where I lived. And then I have to drive home from there, which I think was like half hour or something. Excuse me. And this person was so frugal that the way that they drove meant that they drove hundreds of miles on a motorway at 50 miles an hour because they knew that was the most economical, or they thought that was what their theory was. I don't actually know. I don't know what the facts are. I'm going to choose to believe that they were correct. By driving at 50 miles an hour was the most economical way to drive their car and the way to make petrol last the longest. But when I tell you the frustration of driving at what felt like a snail's pace to get back to my car that was still not home, it was like a journey that should have taken, let's say, 4 hours, took 6 hours because this person was just driving so slow, and you're watching everyone speed past you, including trucks, big old trucks. Well, they were going quicker than us. And I was like, I am never doing this again. I am never. And it wasn't even about the gig. The gig was fine. The gig was actually quite fun. And this person is lovely. That's the other like disappointing thing. I was like, oh, you're so nice. Like, please just drive faster. But kind of like noticing their priorities. And for some reason, this question reminded me of that. I did a second gig with them. I drove myself. As soon as I left, well, we both left at the same time, and I just zoomed off, and I was like, bye. Like I did not, I was like, no, it's worth me spending the extra on petrol money to get home quicker. But the reason that I did that gig was because it was fun, basically. I enjoyed it. So right. That's my own personal thing, like I say, that came to mind straight away. But I think that for this person, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous, or Ms. or they, them, or whoever you are, anonymous person, I think a lot of this always comes back down to what is your ultimate goal? Like, what are you trying to achieve by doing these gigs? Is it part of a bigger plan? Is there a bigger goal that you're aiming for? Or is it purely financial? Like, what, you want to do this full time as your living? You want to play music as your full-time living? I don't even know what instrument you play. I just realized. Like, what is that ultimate goal? Because it's always good to have that North Star to just kind of keep looking towards. And it's also worth acknowledging that the other members of that band will have a completely different North Star to you. Like, nobody has the same North Star. No one has the same situation as you, or you them. And it's worth just recognizing, okay, I need to make the most of this in the way that I want to. Like, I want to get out enough from this situation that it's going to serve me. Because it's very hard to get something that ticks all the boxes. That's my experience, at least. But I think by trying to corral, like, I don't know these other bandmates, but I'm gonna guess that if they're charging these, and they are very low rates, very, very low rates. Well, I don't know what they're charging, but in terms of what you're getting paid and for the travel and all of that, very, very difficult to work with, definitely. And I would hazard a guess, because I've been in this situation, that those people have a day job, a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and then the weekend bit is kind of just for fun for them. That was my guess. I'm reading between the lines so heavily here, and I might be completely wrong. But when bands are charging or paying that kind of level of money, it tells me that that's not their full-time work, because they don't get that. That's unsustainable. It might have been sustainable, I don't know. In fact, I don't know when that. It might have been sustainable when you were in your late teens, early 20s, living in a house share. Like, that's what I was doing, and that was it kind of could make that work. I mean, that would be tight. That would be a tight month. 2 gigs a week at 100 quid. But in fact, no, that wouldn't work. But yeah, like, I think it's always good to recognize the other band members' motives, North Star, whatever you want to say, ultimate goal. And you don't need to know what their ultimate, you don't need to go around saying, hey, so what's your ultimate goal in music? You don't need to do that. But I think it's good to put a bit of context, because everyone has their own context that they're living in, reasons for doing things. But this comes on to my next question, which is, I think it's also worth asking yourself, like, what are you gaining from this? Realistically, what are you gaining? Now, from what you've said, you have a lot of fun doing these gigs. And to me, that is a good enough reason. If you can afford to do these gigs for fun, fantastic. There is an artist that I work with who I say purely, it's not purely just for fun. Fun is the biggest part of it. Luckily, they work with fantastic musicians, so it's always really, like, meaty, the gigs, you know what I mean? And the songs are fantastic. He's one of my favourite songwriters. In fact, I didn't even give him a shout out. Joe Burt. Go look up Joe Burt, B-U-R-T. So J-O-B-U-R-T. Go look him up. His songs are some of my favourite to listen to play. I've had the absolute honour of playing on I think a couple of his albums at this stage. I don't even know. But I have played with him since 2009, I think, on and off. And I love that man. I love that band. And we do some of the most fulfilling and fun gigs that I've ever done. Like, easily. I just adore it. I am never doing that for the money. Like, as long as I'm covering petrol, I am a happy camper, basically. So yeah, that's my version of this. Like, I will purely do that for fun. In saying that, I always do up my skill set because the musicians on it are really fantastic. But that's not the reason I'm doing it. It's because I love Joe and I love his songs. So if you can afford to do it just for fun, because I haven't always been able to afford to work with Joe. This is the thing. Like, I love that gig so much. But the reality is, if I am in need of rent, mortgage payments, bill payments, whatever, if I am short, I need to take on other work. And Joe 100% recognizes that, respects that, like, and he would never, ever get weird about the fact that I, would take on a gig that pays or a tour. It's often, if I do sort of like end up not doing gigs with him, it's because there's a tour that's come in. So anyway, I think that is sort of worth a thought for sure. So the next thing is moving on from, if you're having fun, that's a great one. But again, you kind of need to weigh up, can I afford to have fun? Which sounds awful. It sounds so awful, but you know what I'm saying. The next question is it pushing me musically? If it's pushing you musically and it's expanding your skill set, again, if you can afford to do it, I'd do it. 100%. Again, I have done gigs that are low paid just to expand that skill set. And it may not even be in playing. It may be in other peripheral like skills. Or let's say it's sort of learning electronics is a good one that I always use, or learning how to do playback. The gig fee might not be good, but the long term of knowing how to run playback on a show, that is an investment in myself. Or let's say that there's a percussive element that I need to learn how to do. It's kind of, for me, it's a good excuse. That's what I always sort of use it as. I'm like, this is a good excuse for me to address this. I've just had a really random thought. I've been reading The Alchemist. I've never read it before. I thought I had, and I started reading, I'm like, I have never read this. And I've just realized that kind of there's this idea of like omens and following omens, and I think I've accidentally been doing that all of my life. I just see them as challenges. When challenges come up that don't tick all the boxes, should we say, but they address a very specific skill that I've been avoiding or wanting to learn, I will often, I was going to say always, I don't know if it's always, I have no idea, I've never thought about it, but from recollection, I've always taken on that challenge to gain that skill. And let's just pretend that that's an omen, that I'm like, oh, okay, now is the time. So anyway, I think that it's really, really beneficial. If that can tick that box, then if you can afford to do it, then by all means, do it. The next thing is expanding your network. Always a big thing for me. Obviously, if you're playing with just one band, to me, that tells me that that's not really expanding your network, unless there's many depths coming in from different areas, different circles of musicians, which is great, then definitely do that. Also, if those band members are involved in other projects that they're likely to bring you in on, if they need a dep or something for other band members within other projects, that to me is very, very beneficial as well. So that would be in the equation for me as to whether it's worth doing this for the £100 gig or whatever it is that you're dealing with right now. But kind of all these things are worth asking. Like, what are you actually getting from this? Like I say, fun is an absolutely valid reason to do something, 100%. But it sounds like you're relying on these gigs financially, and therefore, like, unfortunately, the reality is that, they say that money can't buy you happiness. I believe that to a degree, but I do believe that money buys you choice. And if you have enough money to have the choice to choose a gig purely because it's fun, that's fantastic. But unfortunately, most people are not in that position to be able to have that buffer, if you like. So, yeah, I really think it's worth just kind of being pragmatic, I think, about this. So the other sort of aspect that I have to ask about as well, which obviously you can't answer right now, but, anonymous person, but also how early in your, I know you said this isn't your first rodeo, and I respect that and I get it, but how early into your career are you, is my question, because like the first 9 years of my drumming, okay, it was 9 years of learning to play drums. So obviously you're not going to get paid for gigs when you're very first learning. I'm not pretending like that is the thing. But I wasn't able to earn a full-time living until 9 years of playing. And let's say in terms of starting to earn money, I think I started to earn money when I was kind of 16, 17. I was still in school, but then it didn't all crack until like I was 20, just turning 21 basically. So what's that? 5 years essentially, 4 or 5 years. It took 4 or 5 years of doing very low paid gigs or no pay. Some of them were free. Like I was just doing it because again, it was expanding my network or my experience or whatever else. And I just thought, right, this is an investment in me. That's what it's about for me, or has been about, especially at that stage. So I think there does need to be an element of time that's involved with this as well. In terms of not just experience, but again, network. It's a whole thing. And what I will say also is that even at that 9-year period, so for me, it was 2008 when I started working full time, I was fully supporting myself. That was not from one band. I don't think, I was just sitting reminiscing. I was thinking about this. I don't think I've ever earned a full-time living from one band or one outfit, should we say. I might get a chunk of work that is, say, 2 months touring, and that might look after me for 6 months worth of expenses. But what about the other 6 months of the year? No. So I'm still doing, function gigs, covers gigs, other tours, one-off gigs, recording sessions, obviously, remote recording. I do what they call, like, I go and do seminar type things. Like I have a variety of different things that I'm always doing and have always done. And so I think, I'm not going to say it's unrealistic to think that one band could support you full time, but I think you're giving yourself a better chance if you are expanding out to other areas to earn within music. So yeah, that's just kind of my lived experience, at least. Other people I'm sure have a completely different experience, but that is my experience. And in a way, I like that that's my experience because it's never made me rely on one band, and it's always made me rely on myself, if that makes sense. Again, trust issues, trust issues over here. Anyway, excuse me. I don't know why I'm coughing so much today. It's very strange. But so coming back to, let's say that you do want to stay just with this one band. Is it worth, rather than coming at the band with the question of, this isn't enough, you need to pay me more, which I know that's not what you said, but I'm just putting it very bluntly. Is it worth asking the question, could we charge more as a band? Could we position ourselves in more high-end gigs, like function gigs or weddings or things like that? How could we take ourselves to the next level so that we could charge more and therefore you're getting paid more? Obviously, this is difficult. You're coming in as someone that has been there for 4 or 5 months. You are not the core of the band by the sounds of it. You are not someone that has started the band. And that brings me on to my next sort of like question to ask. Could you start your own outfit? Is that, if it's really that important to you, is that a possibility? Could you start your own band? And the fun with that is that you get to obviously choose the other people that are in the band, not just like personality wise, but playing wise. But also, rather than having a set band, you could have a roster of musicians that you use. Now, let me tell you, every session musician in the UK, and probably the States as well, I would imagine, when they're not on tour, they are doing gigs, function gigs. They are, because they have to make ends meet in the same way that I was. Always. I'm always doing a variety of things at any one time. And if you are the person that gets to call someone that is, doing a big gig, a named artist gig or whatever, and you say, hey, if you're off the road, like, do you fancy coming and doing this function gig for 300 quid? They're probably not going to turn it down. They're probably like, yeah, sure, like, why not? So is it worth maybe seeing if that is a possibility for you? Maybe, I don't know. Personally, no, I couldn't do it. It's not in my wheelhouse at all. Like I have many different skill sets. Putting together a band for a function gig is not one of them. So for me personally, not my thing, but I respect if you're able to do that. Massive respect to you. So this brings me on to what I would do if I were in your position. And I've kind of touched on this anyway. I would 100% start seeking out other bands to work with. That's what I would do if I were in your position. Like I say, I've never had full-time income from one band. Never. Even when I was with The Darkness, I was still doing covers gigs. I was still doing all sorts of stuff. I was still doing recording. I was doing loads. And I think it's a bit of a misconception. Well, at least look, there are some people that can do it, that are working with artists that are touring 24/7. And that's great, it's fantastic, but in my experience, it's not the norm. Those are the outliers, and we're talking like they have to be world-class artists that either are touring all the time, but even then they need to write albums, so it's not going to be all the time. All artists have so many multiples of things that they're doing all of the time. So there's either that or they're putting you on a retainer of some sort, which in my mind is my idea of hell. The idea of a retainer, it makes me feel so restricted and claustrophobic, and just like, again, for me, that takes away my choice. And my choice is that is my North Star. That is my thing, like the ability to have choice of what I do. I don't ever want to be tied down to a situation. Commitment issues when it comes to music, let me tell you. I don't like it at all. I've worked very hard to make this career, this very bizarre mix of many things. And for someone else to dictate to me what I can and can't do, absolutely not. Never going to happen. I just can't do it. It's not in my being. I have to have choice. I have to. So some people find that frightening. Other people, like me, find it very empowering. So I would say, like the other thing about this, I think, is that, again, coming back to this restriction, I think mentally, by looking for other bands and working with other bands, I think there is something about not putting all your eggs in one basket. It gives you a freedom. It gives you breathing space. It gives you options. And I think, like I say, for me personally, that's the biggest thing. I think retrospectively, it's probably the biggest reason I've stuck this out so much, even in the hardest of times. And there have been the hardest times. It's like, okay, but is it worth me giving up my choice and to be able to choose to do things or not do things? Most, especially early days, I didn't have that choice. It was like, no, I just need to do everything I can to make ends meet. But, the longer you do things, the more you do have a little bit of choice, I think. But anyway, so I think mentally for this person, for Anonymous, I think that it is all very all-encompassing. This is the one and only band. This is, everything sort of relies on this. Everything is contingent on this. And I wonder if it's worth starting to seek out other bands to work with, other outfits to work with. There are so many function bands, and you can find for me, the way that I went with it, because I found it the most flexible, was I reached out to other drummers and sort of like said, look, if you ever need a dep, or bands that I sort of like knew and would just be like, if your drummer's ever off sick, give me a shout, sort of thing. And they did, and that was a really great way for me to just cover all those bases of like meeting new people, as well as earning money, as well as pushing myself musically. And that doesn't mean that they were necessarily the best musicians in the world, but when they're not the best musicians in the world, you have to find ways to make things the best they can be. And that in itself is a skill. So there's always a silver lining with all of that, but it is, it can be scary. And obviously the difficulty with that is sometimes dates will clash with this one band that you're currently in. Now, the way that I would handle that personally is that if a date comes in and I was already booked, then with another band, I would be like, look, I'm booked already. I'm working on a first come, first served basis. However, what I will also say is that sometimes if gigs come in and they are so well paid, or it's a chunk of work, if it's a tour, it does take precedent, unfortunately, over those one-off gigs. And so I would, you can come at it and say, look, I'm really sorry, but I can't afford to do this gig, which is true, because you're being offered money that is going to cover your mortgage for that month. Then, and just make it a reality for this band that this is the reality for you, especially if this is your full-time job. This is can't afford to not do this other work. So I'm really sorry. And obviously never leave anyone in the lurch. Always say, look, I've sorted out a dep, or I can sort out a dep if you want, because they may have people that they want to bring in, and make sure that they do a good job. Obviously, someone you can trust. But yeah, that is a way to kind of make it really hit home, I think, with band members, that, you know, this is not enough to retain you, essentially. And it feels a bit icky maybe and a bit gross, but you know, at the end of the day, it's kind of just it's the reality. It's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, but it is the reality. If you're trying to earn a living, that's what this is. Like, you have to make informed decisions. You can't just waywardly be doing random things or just sticking with one band. And I get the appeal of having the security of knowing one band, one set of musicians, one set list. That's lovely. But if you realistically want to be earning more, it needs to be much wider than that. Like I say, I've been doing this a long time. I have never earned a full-time living from one outfit, ever. And that is, honestly, it's quite a depressing reality having to say that and realizing that, and kind of, yeah, that is, it's not great, but it is a reality. And does it make me love my job any less? No, because I actually thrive on that kind of, what's the word? Like, it's not even the instability of it, but it's kind of like that you're always sort of trying to find a way. And I love that. I love the challenge. But more than that, I love the variety of what I'm doing. I thrive on that, luckily, because if I didn't, that would be a problem. But I do know people that are sort of like in full-time, like one gig, and that is their full-time living. So, you know, it is possible, but it's not the norm. I would say that. And yeah, so that's kind of my feelings on it, Anonymous. I hope that this has helped in some way. And like, it is a nightmare. It is. And I wish that I could sort of tell you that there was a quick fix for this, but I don't believe that there is. If you find one, please do let me know. I'd love to share it with everyone. But yeah, it's difficult. I mean, the big difficulty is it's not your band. So they say, this is the fee, you say yes or no. And saying no can be a risk, because my rule is, if you say no, you have to be prepared to lose the gig, which is a hard reality to face. Like, someone else could come in and do a fantastic job and they're willing to work for that, or less even. And that happens a lot more than you'd realize in this industry. It's difficult. It's difficult. But, yeah, if you can kind of make moves to regain a bit of control with what you're doing, just having that North Star, understanding what your ultimate goal is. Because if it is to purely play, because I don't know, maybe you've got a full-time 9-to-5 job and this is just fun for you, well then maybe this is okay. Or maybe it's not. If you do need that financial buffer, then I'd say move outside of just this band, because you can't control how much they're going to pay you. You can ask, absolutely, but it sounds like they're not open to it, which is fine. That's their prerogative at the end of the day. You're hired by them. So either look for other bands, which would be my go-to, or if you're really super amazing, not like me, if you can start your own outfit, by all means, go do that thing. I think that's a really great way of doing it. But anyway, I hope this has helped. I hope this has helped someone, at least, if only for my silly story of the 50-mile-per-hour journey back from Cornwall that lasted for such a long time. So much. It was the sun had arisen by the time that I got back to my car, and I was so angry at myself. I was so angry at myself that I agreed to, you know, get in the car and be driven by this person. Oh my goodness, so annoyed. But it is what it is. I lived and I learned. Control freak over here, control freak. I've had real issue with control freakiness this week. Oh my gosh, things are out of my control currently. Tuesday, I was spiraling. It was insane. Like I was going crazy. I was going actually crazy, and all about something that I literally cannot control. And I'm like, I just have to wait. and I just have to let life take its course and then see. And it might not even be a problem, as it turns out. So I need to just chill my beans. It's very difficult. Oh, such a control freak. But anyway, if you've enjoyed if you've enjoyed this episode, you know the drill. Please do feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you have a question of your own that you'd like to ask me for a future episode, like Lovely Anonymous, then you can go to emilydrums.com/AMA. Please be as precise and give me as much detail as you can, because that really helps me in trying to get a picture of where you're at and how I can help in the best way possible. The more vague, the less beneficial, I think. And also for me personally, quite honestly, the more vague, the less inspiring for me. Like when there's specific things like this, it instantly brings to mind very specific things that I've been through. And I'm like, oh yeah, let me share that, because that could be helpful, if only to be like, look, you're not alone here. You're not the only one. So please be as specific as you can with your questions. You can stay anonymous like this person. You can get a shout out. I'm happy either way. Just give me your questions. I want to hear them. So emilydrums.com/AMA. And if you would like to look at doing some one-on-one coaching so that I can help you personally on your journey, then you can book in for a free 30-minute taster session, which if you go to emilydrums.com, you can book in there. Basically what it is, it's 30 minutes, funnily enough. I just ask you some questions about where you're at, where you want to be, what your North Star is. And then I just sort of give you any thoughts that I have in the moment. And that's a 30-minute call. And then towards the end of it, we can talk about if you wanted to do coaching moving forward. But if you don't, that's no worries. It's just nice to have a chat, quite honestly. And I love learning about what people are up to. And obviously, if I can help, it means like it fulfills me in a way that I don't have the words. So it'd be lovely just to have a chat, quite honestly, from my perspective. But emilydrums.com if you fancy that. Okay, I'm going to love you and leave you now. I'm going to go have some breakfast because I haven't had breakfast yet. I've only had coffee. I still have coffee. And yeah, I guess I will see you next week, for another question. Who knows what it's going to be? I always do these things just in the moment and like just go with it. But I say in the moment, I read the question, I make some notes. That's the moment. But yeah, I hope you're having a great day wherever you are, whatever you're up to. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time. All right, lots of love to you. See you later. Bye.
It's almost time to